Now when you know everything about fill parameter, let's talk about stroke parameters and how to use them. Well, today I'll show you about like 3 Figma Pro secrets that will allow you to become more efficient when you're working with fill and stroke parameters. But also I'll show you what is stroke parameter in general. Similar to what we have with fill parameter, we can change color, opacity, we can work with different color space, create gradients, and strokes have additional parameters that I'll show you just in a moment. As you can see here, let me zoom in. As you can see here, this again, just shape, simple shapes, that with these simple shapes we can create complex elements as these buttons, for example, here, using stroke parameter and also its values. So let's start from the very beginning where stroke parameter is and how to work with that. Again, let's create shape, R, press, we created just shape. The second thing that you can do is you see here the stroke parameter. You press plus, similar to when you want to add fill, and you will see stroke parameter added. By default, you will see, as you can see, fill parameter we have and stroke parameter together. So they work together, which means that I can change the color here and I can change the color, for example, here, and I'll see stroke parameter applied. But today, because we are talking only about strokes, I want to remove the fill parameter so you see exactly what's happening when we're working with stroke parameters. Similar to fill, we see the exact same anatomy, structure. So we have the color, we have the value of this color, we have opacity of this color. We can hide and show it, we can remove it. But in addition to all those things, we also have drop down where we can select stroke center, inside and outside. In addition to that, we also have the width, like the weight of the stroke. Now it's 1 point, but it can be 10. So let's make it 10 so it will be visible, more visible, and you will understand what exactly happening when you're changing something. So currently our shape is 100 by 100 pixels or points. Perfect. And the stroke, as you can see, is inside of the shape, is inside of 100 by 100 points box. When I change it to outside, now the shape size is still the same, 100 by 100, but we see the stroke outside of it. So it adds additional 10 pixels from each side. So keep it in mind, it's similar to this exact parameter when the stroke is outside. That's exactly the parameter that is used in web design, in CSS, when you add border or outline. Now, if you change it to center, then the stroke will be created exactly in the middle of the edges of the shape that you created. It's right here. Super simple, obvious, and clear. Awesome. In some cases, you can use center, in some cases outside, in some cases inside. Where to use what, you will understand by practicing. In some of the modules, specifically in graphic design module, when we'll start creating, for example, icons, you will understand why we should use one over another, and why, for example, in some cases, we have to switch from outside to inside. Now, just keep in mind that you have different options here. Let's go with the outside because this is the most popular, not like most popular. This is not the default parameter, but this is what's used, for example, in web design. The next thing that you see here is additional icon, strokes per side. Not so long ago, Figma added these parameters that allows you to choose where the stroke will be added. So it can be only on top, it can be only on the right, only at the bottom or left. Super cool feature specifically when you're working, for example, with text. And if you want to create the underline under the text, this is what you can choose. So you add text to an additional frame, for example, then you add the stroke per slide. And in this case, the text will have underline, but you will be able to control how far the underline will be from the text. The next thing, you also have custom, the option custom. When you click on that, you can select exactly what will be where. Super random shape here, but let's imagine you're working with brutalism and you want to create this effect, but instead of here we'll set 10 and here 30, and let's imagine you just created the photo slide just using one shape and stroke parameter. You created the shape like Polaroid style photos here. And if you add fill color, and it will be FFF, and on top of everything. So this is how you just created an additional like graphic design elements just using these different parameters. And this is why I want to show you all these parameters, because sometimes you can achieve incredible mind-blowing results using just one shape and its parameters. As you can see, I'm using just one layer. But with this just one layer, I was able to create this element. Using one shape, one layer, and completely different result. Awesome. The next parameters. Let's switch back here to all and set it to 10. And here you see more options like advanced stroke settings. What is advanced stroke setting? Well, let's click here. When I click, I see stroke style. It can be solid or dash or custom. Then I see endpoints, but it's not active. Why? We'll discuss it in a second. And then we see join. And join, this is exactly what we will see when one point, one side, one edge connects with another one. Which means that we can set here, we can have meter that will be just 90 degrees by default. You can set bevel, and then you will see these cuts on the corners. Keep in mind that when you keep it inside, you will not see this cut effect on the corners. So that's why it's better to keep it outside. And the last one is round. When you click on round, then these corners will be round. Even if the shape, our shape doesn't have any rounded corners, you will be able to make them look rounded just by adding this parameter join round. Then let's take a look at the dash option. When I click dash, I see that there is a stroke, then gap, stroke and gap, and that's exactly how it works. Dash, gap, and you can set the size of the dash, like fill option, and the size of the gap. So I can set it to 10, and I can set gap, I can change the gap to 30. Now the distance here is 30 points and the gap itself is 10. But also I can change the dash cap. Dash cap is, this is our dash, and cap is how it will look, how the side of the dash will look. So dash cap by default is from here to here. The next one, it goes outside of our dash. This is what it will look like. And also we can set the round. When I click round, boom, our dash is round. But as you can see, the shape is kind of weird. I set round, but now we have these flowers. Well, sometimes it can be the effect that you want to achieve, maybe. But if you want a perfectly rounded dashes, it's like dash outline. In this case, you set here to center. You set to center and join to round. So now you have, let's remove our fill. Now you have these dash lines all around. If you set to inside, as you can see, again, weird shape. Outside, not exactly what we want. Center, exactly what we need in this particular case. And then by changing this side, we'll see it a little bit more, look more beautiful. Now, where to use it? Now you know all the parameters, by the way. Almost all the parameters. Let's get back, by the way. So, 10, change the color. One thing that we haven't discussed, that strokes have the same settings for colors as fill color, fill parameter. You can set the linear, radial, angular, diamond, image, and video backgrounds, like color or stroke, fill, color, or layer to our shape. When I set linear, similar to fill color, I can choose exactly the gradient that I want to achieve. Let's imagine something like this, and remember that we can change the parameters to something else, and we can change the shape, and now you achieve this gradient border button here. We have the same, just one element, but we have already gradient for our border. Now let's take a look at everything here that I just created. This is the default style. The next one is I changed the color. Now the same style, but I changed the parameter rounded corners. This is our square with rounded corners, but I set our border only from the top. This is where border is set for the same size, like 3 points, from the top and right. This is our dash. This is where I go to advanced setting. I set dash, dash, gap. In this case, the only thing that we haven't discussed yet is when I click here and set custom. What does it mean, custom? Custom means that you can set multiple dash shapes here, and they go through the comma. So first of all, 6 pixels goes for the dash. Then you will have 12 pixels gap. Then you will have 18 pixels dash, and then 24 pixels gap. To see it a little bit closer, let's set our dashes to 2, then 4, then 20, then 40. And this is what we'll have. So we have here 2, and let's switch from round dash gap to none. So this dash is 2, then I have 4 pixels gap, then I have 20 pixels or points dash, and then I have 40 pixels gap before the pattern will repeat. If you see that, but how can I change, for example, the height of our stroke here to make it maybe like a rectangle? Well, if you set the dashes, the smallest one, like to 2, and you want it to be a square, then here it should be 2 as well, the width here. But because Figma adds additional additional, not shapes, it changes the size for the dash. It calculates it completely differently from what it calculates for the parameters like width, height, and everything. For dash, in this case, sometimes you need to find the right parameters here. So as you can see, this is not exactly 2. This is not 2 pixels, while we set the dash for 2 pixels. So sometimes you just need to play it and to set exactly that will create this kind of square size, and you can go even 2.6 only then it will be closer to our square. Just keep in mind that sometimes it has this optical distortion when you are working with specifically dashes. And then you change boom to here, maybe to 1 if I want to create a circle, or maybe 0.2, 0.1, boom. Now it's more like a circle. I need to create a gap, a bigger gap between these two shapes. Now I have this gap here, and this is how I just created using this custom advanced technique. I created this stroke. Same, just one shape, one layer, but a completely different feeling. Sometimes it's super useful when you're working, for example, with graphic design elements, or when you want to create the style like this without creating all these different shapes, like, you know, separately. But you just created it, and then we can, for example, animate it so it will rotate in one of the directions, but it will be just one shape. This is where you need it. This is where you become super resourceful and efficient. In most of the cases, you will not need that, but when you want to, sometimes when you have this crazy idea of, oh my God, I want to achieve that effect, this is how you do that. And you can also play with that and add something else. Let's imagine after that, you will add additional one like 2, 10. And now you have additional dash and gap. And boom, you have a different feeling. And you can apply this effect. Let's imagine that you created line. Remember that we can create lines, right, from the shapes. And remember that we can copy style and paste them. Command Option C, select the element, Command Option V, and now it's applied to the line. And when we learn how to work with pen tool, you will learn, for example, how to apply it to, how to create a completely different shape using the same style to create the shape like this. This is how you become resourceful and efficient. Just play with it. Some people say, yeah, stroke, but what's difficult can be with stroke? Well, nothing difficult if you're just working with default parameters, but we are talking here about Figma Pro secrets. So I want to show you some advanced techniques, and this is how you create this feeling. This is how you create these additional elements. In addition to that, as you can see here, we have also arrows. I haven't created this circle, this square here, or this arrow triangle on the right side. No, in Figma by default, again, when I create the line, I select the line tool, I create it. In Figma, let's change the color, so it will be similar to what we have, but a little bit different. Change the width to 3 so we can see it exactly. When you create lines, basically, what is line? Line that has at least one end and one start point. And here we have the start point and end point. Once you have a line, once you work with a line, you see additional parameters here, and you see start point, end point. And you can change the view, their view. When you select this drop down, you will see different parameters. You can create a line arrow that goes left, different type of line, reverse triangle, circle arrow, diamond arrow, just round cap, and square cap, similar to the caps that we had. And let's imagine that you're creating a user flow and you show your clients, or you show to your manager, or you show to other designers that from this screen we'll go here, from this screen we'll go here. When you click on this button, we will jump to this screen. When you create something like this, this is where you can use these parameters. You create it just once, and when we'll start using the pen tool, you'll understand how easy it is to create flows like that. So you select like circle on the left side for the starting point, and for the end you create the arrow like this or that one. And in addition to that, you go to advanced mode, and here you can change it to dash and change the size of dash and gap, and boom, done. If you want to create this rounded style, then you again go to advanced mode, dash cap, round, and now you have this smooth button. Later, when we'll be working with pen tool, we can create the shapes like this. This is still line. We can also change here the corner radius, so we will achieve this shape. And then for this shape, let's change its color and its size to something like this. And starting point will be this dot, and the end point will be triangle arrow. So now I have this arrow, and now when I create one frame and another frame, and let's imagine it's a huge flow, and let's imagine that somewhere here at the top I have a button, and when I click on this button, I go from here, from this screen, I just move down and right, I go to this screen. So now it's inside of the frame. I move this arrow outside of the frame, that it goes on top of everything. Boom, and this frame should be below the arrow. So I have just one element, but I show exactly what's happening. This is how I can create flows. And also let's select now all these frames. Let's put them for the presentation mode. Let's add them to another frame so we can see the arrow a little bit better. And now I have one screen. When I click on this button, I'll go to this screen instead of this one, because on this screen I will go only when I do this. For example, I click on the menu like back arrow, and then I'll go to this screen from here. As you can see, as simple as that, using stroke parameters and their particular advanced options, you can create user flows to navigate where, for example, a developer should look at how the interaction is happening. When people are clicking on this button, then we'll go here. When they click back button, they will go here. For the back button, we also will use stroke that will be just our arrow. The only thing that we will change it here. This is our back button by default, but we'll also change our join to round. And in this case, we have round here. And in addition to that, here we'll set to round and round. And now I have this smooth arrow back. And of course, now it's too big. I move it here. When people click on that, they will go to this screen. You see, it's just stroke parameter and just lines. It's the same tool that you already know how to use. And now you can use the advanced technique to go from something super simple and obvious to something, how did you do that? It's probably super hard. And you're like, well, no, you know what? It's just stroke parameter. I just created this line and applied some additional things here. And here we go. Here's what we achieved. Super fast and easy. And I can show you how to do that. This is how you become the best designer in the room. Okay, now let's go back to our parameters here. I just want to show you that the same things that we just discussed, you can apply to different shapes. Dash if you want to. Here, if you want to center, round it, 20, 20. If you want to create something like this, boom, done, created. Fast and easy. Just simply practice. The second thing that I want to show you is that similar to our fill layer, you can create gradients. And I just showed you that you can create a gradient like this, that has 4 colors, for example. In addition to that, you can use not only linear gradient, like in this case, but you can use to achieve this effect, where let's imagine that your button, you have a button on the screen, and there is a source of light that goes from top to bottom. And in this case, of course, the top part of our button will be a little bit different, it will be brighter. And this is where you can use a radial gradient that goes from top to bottom, from white color through purple to blue color. And that's it. And this part will define how huge the source of light is. In addition to that, again, additional advanced technique, Figma Pro Secrets, you can add additional color here on stroke. And when you edit it, instead of solid color, you can use also gradient, but this gradient will be white, that goes to white, and 100%. So now you have radial gradient that creates a specific feeling from this button, but also you have additional linear gradient that creates this feeling that the light goes from top to bottom. Or you can make it a little bit lighter, like 50%, and now this part light, you have the source of light here as well, and then the gradient goes here. Similar to that, maybe you don't want to use a radial gradient, you just use solid color, but of a particular, like purple, and at the top you have this linear gradient, 80%, and change its position to just go from top to bottom, and boom, the same effect using two stroke colors that go from top to bottom. Similar to everything else, to fill parameter, you can also put image here. Instead of gradients, you add image. And how it works, now you also know how to use Unsplash plugin, right? And I hope that you already installed it. So how to create this button with the image, super fast and easy using Unsplash plugin that will help you to do that. So let's imagine that I created this button and I set here to 36 around rounded corners, so 36. But now what I'm going to do, I'm going to press Command P, Unsplash, Enter. I go here, I go and click Abstract, and I see different images here. And let's click on this one, for example. And you see the fill color is set, but I don't want to see it as a fill color. I want to set it as a stroke. For this, use the shortcut Shift X. I press Shift and hold it and press X. And this is how I switch from fill to stroke. So I switch the parameters, like the values for fill and stroke. And if I don't want it to be, for example, blue for the fill, I just remove it or I change it to something else. Let's remove it and boom, now on the background I have an image. Similar when you're working with developers, for developers to create this style of buttons, well, we will discuss it in the web design module. Okay, now similar to image, you can also add a video. Yes, so you just select the element, you create this button, stroke, and here you set video, and for the video you choose video and choose from your computer. How it works, I already created for you to show how it works. So I go to the presentation mode, and now I see this button and it's moving. So you can create the super simple video, pretty short, and put it on the background as a stroke, and then your button will become alive, but at the same time it doesn't distract you from the text that you will have inside. Let's imagine that inside you will have learn more. Let's set the font Inter, and here it will be like 20 inside. And now when I select this button, play, I see learn more, and it's wow, it's kind of moving. It's like, wow, what's happening? Super cool effect. And yeah, if your video is not too distracting, not too jumpy, then it will be super cool. At the same time, for this stroke, you can also change the size of it, make it a little bit thinner, Now it looks even more interesting, elegant and aesthetic. And if you think, yeah, but it looks like a button here, but what about what if it's in actual design? So I'm putting here, moving here, boom, fill color. Let's go with pure black, heading. Then we have description. For the description, we will use not. As you can see, I'm super fast. I'm doing super fast something. The more you practice, the more you will be able to repeat, like do all the same actions that I'm doing here. In this case, I'm going to use just 72 for the opacity. We already discussed everything that I show you right now. We already discussed, except that type tool. We'll talk about it later. Now you can just take a look what I'm doing. And if you're familiar with the type tool, just follow me. If not, then we'll talk about it in just a couple of seconds. So heading, and then again, because you already know how to do that, let's create the shape here, 40. Of course, the size of it will be a little bit bigger, like maybe, let's go with 360 by 720. This size was pretty popular back in about, I don't know, 2000, maybe 17 with Samsung phones. And here, Command P, unsplash. And here we'll use some technology, maybe this. Now I have an image, I have heading, I have description, and I have Learn More button. For the Learn More button, I'll set this to 0, position it here. Later we'll learn how to use auto layout, medium. And now let's go here, and this is what you see. But the only thing, for the prototype mode, I will change the background to something lighter to see the actual background color. The only thing that I see right now that our Learn More button, like everything is set perfectly. Let's change it back. The Learn More is gray. Let's put it on. It's already on top of everything. Let me create somewhere here. As you can see, sometimes you can see, yeah, it looks cool here. It looks cool here, but somehow it doesn't show what's happening with it doesn't show the button that we created initially before. While the layer opacity is 100, the fill opacity is 100, I'll just remove it from here, put it inside, go here. So basically, probably there is something that doesn't allow me to see the background. For these purposes, I'll just change the fill of this button to black, and let's see what we'll see now. Oh, I see what's happening. So this is just my tool. That's the reason. The tool that shows the buttons that I'm pressing, the keys that I'm pressing, was exactly on top of the button, so that's why you couldn't see the text that it's actually white and not gray. So boom, you just created incredible, cool, stylish design. I would change the size of the button a little bit to make it a little bit cooler. Looks incredible. In just a couple of seconds, we created this screen. Of course, we will need to change the heading, the description. We need exactly to know why we created it before creating it. But now you know how to do these things. And in case you have this idea, I want to impress my clients, and in addition to all these things that I already created with my design, I want to improve it with some additional things, something that never ever anybody thought about. Boom, you create this video stroke button, not the video button itself, but just stroke, and it looks exactly like this. Super cool and incredible. Keep these things in mind. One final thing that I want to show you in this lesson is fill to stroke to outline. We already discussed fill to stroke. This is when you create a shape and then you press Shift X, reminding you this is how you create just stroke. This is how you switch between stroke and fill. Shift X, Shift X. You can see it here. Shift X, Shift X. Done. And now to outline. What does it mean, stroke to outline? It means that when you have stroke, and as you can see, just stroke. And when I change it, it keeps working as a stroke, which is perfect, which is exactly what we want. But we also can switch it to outline. We can switch the stroke to the actual shape, not this, but by pressing Command Shift O or Control Shift O, Command Shift O, and boom, Command Shift O. So you can see what I pressed. And now instead of stroke here, you see fill. And now when you change this size, it works as a shape. And now when you go to the points mode by pressing Enter while the shape is selected, you see all the dots here and you can change them. You can change their position here to achieve something specific that you want. And while you think, yeah, but why should I need to use, where I will use it? Yeah, that's exactly what I want to say. Well, when you're creating, for example, icons, and when you create, for example, an icon like 2020 and additional point, you will learn it in the graphic design mode. Go a little bit down. Now for everything rounded corners 2, Shift X, 2, Command Shift O. Congratulations, you just created a home button, home icon. In addition to that, if you want to, you just can add the door here. That will be exactly the same color. Control C to select the color. Select together, and yeah, union selection, we'll talk about them later as well. Now you have just one button, Command E, now just one shape. That's it. So this is how we create icons, and this is where you need to know how to switch, for example, from fill to stroke and then to outline, because it will allow you to create icons in the future that you will be able to use in your websites or mobile apps. And one last thing that I want to tell you, we never talked about it before, but I think it's time to talk about this tool, move and scale. What's the difference between them? And stroke is the best time when we are talking about strokes to talk about move and scale. Well, now scale move tool is selected. It means that when I change the size of the shape, I'm just changing its size as it is, just width and height. That's it, in just 2 directions. We are working in 2 directions, width and height. That's it, without changing, scaling the parameters. So stroke was 20 and it stays 20 no matter how big it is. Let's set our width and height to 100. That's it. This is when we use move tool. But when I switch to scale tool, it will scale it, and you will see here scale. You can scale it like, you can make it smaller, 2 times smaller. You can increase the size, 2x, 3x, 4x. Let's go with 2x so you understand what's happening. I press 2x and boom, now it got bigger. You see the different dots here. It means that this is starting from this point. The scale will happen. Let's go back and let's imagine I wanted to scale from the top left corner. So I click this dot here, change it to 2x. And boom, now the size is 200 by 200, which is perfect. But at the same time, the stroke size scaled as well. It's now 40 by 40. Why do you need to know about these things, and why do you need to know about the difference? By the way, to switch between move and scale, just press V to go to, not here, to go to the move tool, K to go to scale tool. Then you close it, V, move, K, when selected, you go to the scale tool, or just close it to go to move tool, back to move tool. You can also change its size to something that exactly that you need, 150 by 150. It always works. It keeps proportions when you scale it up. Where do you need it? So let's imagine, remember we created this house icon. Let's create it again. As you can see, I'm using simple shape like square. I add additional point. I'll show you how to use it when we'll start working with pen tool. I select it, change the rounded corners to, in this case, 4, Shift X, 2, and change the color to dark. So this is my home icon, okay? And we have stroke. Now, let's imagine that I want to make it a little bit bigger. How to make it bigger? Well, I can just simply click here to keep the proportions of the shape, or I can hold Shift and change here. But when I change the size, as you can see, stroke stays the same, it's just 2. And that's not what I want. For example, when I'm creating the icon that is 2 times bigger than the initial icon that I created. In this case, exactly, you need to use scale tool. So let me show you 2 examples. So the first one will be, let's double the size, multiple 2, because now you know that math function is working in Figma. Boom, this is our double size when we use move tool. And now let's create another one, K, 2x. This is the icon that was created when we used the scale tool. And most likely you wanted to achieve something like this when you're creating something bigger. You want your strokes to change as well. Of course, you could change here the stroke to 4, go, but at the same time you see that rounded corners are still 4, exactly as it was created before, which means that now I need to change the rounded corners to 8, similar to that, because scale tool scales all the parameters. It scales width, height, not rotation of course, rounded corners, and it scales the stroke size. And also it will scale when we'll be talking about effects, it will scale effects as well. While move tool doesn't do that. Move tool just changes the size of the parameters, the width and height, and that's it. And also X and Y position, of course, X and Y, because that's why it's called move tool. So keep it in mind when you're creating something. I'll bring everything back so you see the difference. And now we just covered absolutely all the parameters of the stroke tool, and now you know how to create all these incredible things. And you're ready to go to our next lesson. We'll be talking about effects. Our next incredible parameter we'll be working with when we'll be again working with shapes, effects. This is our next section in the parameter section. See you there.